clients have to feel that the planner is, and then we're going down to it, they're accountable, right? That they're going to take responsibility for the things that they say they're going to do. They have to be both caring and committed for the long term, right? We want a long-term relationship with clients. And they have to be competent both academically and experientially. Again, one of the sayings that I've heard time and time again is, people really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. If you can show somebody that you really care about them, right, they will then take the lead and be more receptive to the things that you offer them. I had mentioned a little bit earlier, communication is a huge piece, and we'll talk about throughout the whole course, but it's an element that's in every aspect of this process. A couple of things I find is that you shouldn't feel like you're imposing when you're asking for information. And this goes for both the client and the planner. I mean, typically the clients, they have questions and they feel like they don't want to bother the planner with their questions, right? Planners need to create an environment where it's easy to ask questions. So, because typically, again, our clients are intimidated. They're afraid of sounding stupid when they ask a question. So they don't want to ask many questions. What kind of people do we deal with, right? We have attorneys, accountants, portfolio managers, insurance counselors, all kinds of other professionals. Rarely does a person have all the skills necessary to handle all the aspects of a plan. Rarely does a person have all of the skills necessary to do everything that a client could possibly want. For this reason, there are basically a couple of models that I've seen the way financial planners work. Financial planners sometimes work as, let me change my ink here, let me go to a different color so you can kind of see here. So they work as a project manager. That is essentially what they do is they develop a plan. They develop the actual things that need to get done, and then they micromanage those plans by using these other professionals. So they really don't do any of the legwork, if you will. They do the development piece. And then in the end, they sum up and monitor the process to make sure the process is working. Frequently, that's the way more and more kinds of financial planners are working. There are still a bunch of financial planners out there, and quite frankly, I happen to be one of those, that basically we perform one or more of the components, and then we outsource the remainder. So we are a sort of a project manager, but depending on our abilities and our skill level, we'll send things out. For instance, I'm not an attorney, so I can't help anybody with things like estate planning or writing a will or any of those things. So whatever those tasks are, obviously have to be shipped out. I do have some expertise in understanding investing and retirement, and I certainly understand the insurance world. I also have some background and experience in working with people with credit issues. So anything else other than those things, I also have to ship that out to a professional who works in that area. What about degrees and credentials? What things do you need? Well, I mean, your book talks about that a financial planner has to have the right kinds of degrees, and quite frankly, in the real world, that's really just not a requirement. For licensure, most financial service licenses only require a GED. I mean, that includes insurance and securities. There are only a few product lines in some states that actually might require degrees. It turns out now that in Ohio, I used to have a mortgage license where I could help people refinance their home. I could help them, package their debt in a more reasonable version, if you will. We could also even actually write brand new mortgages for homes. I could do all that stuff, but now with the changes in what's happened in the mortgage world, that's become far more complicated process than I'm willing to go through. So that's a piece that I ship off to somebody else. As far as credentials, there are marks. They're referred to as marks, and these are the primary marks. CFP is a certified financial planner, a chartered financial consultant. PFS is a personal financial specialist. And I think this is a registered financial planner, RFP. I think that's what that stands for. CLU is an insurance designation. CFA is a portfolio manager's designation. In addition to these credentials, obviously you have to have licenses. You have to be licensed to market financial instruments. So securities, insurance, and we talked about mortgage licenses. Certainly if you're going to give legal advice, you have to be a lawyer. So there are other licensing aspects or things that you might need in order to market yourself as a financial planner. We talked about experience. Experience is very important. One of the challenges that I have in general, and I think this works with all industries, is this question of experience. Experience is only good if it's good experience. So somebody who is taught improperly, or somebody who doesn't have the right, we'll talk about this when we get to ethics. They don't have the right mindset to be a helper rather than a taker. That experience might not necessarily be good. All right, we need continuing education. Most licenses require annual or biannual types of continuing education. Certainly with certifications, we need to take CE courses and credits. So kind of summing up, basically, your textbook says you need to earn the appropriate degrees, you have to have the appropriate certification, and you have to meet continuing education requirements. This key part is the piece where we talk about having a competent financial planner. Essentially, they just have to know what it is that they're doing. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Besides being competent, you have to have the desire to do the right thing. I've come across numerous times when you just look and say, what was going on with that planner's or that advisor's mindset when they did what they did. They did it. It cost the client more money. Not necessarily that they weren't making a return or some other things like that. We'll talk about this when we get out to the investment side. But sometimes people churn accounts. They want to create commissions for themselves. So those people just aren't good people. You can't do anything about it. They're everywhere. So again, a lack of understanding of the fundamentals of the process can really lead to it opens the door to a person being taken advantage of. So even if you find somebody that has experience and that has competence, in quotes, the person still has to be a good person if they're ultimately going to help you. What about ethics in general? The CFP board has developed this different definition, or it's an acronym that covers it. Basically, you need to be efficient. You need to work as efficiently, as quickly, and professionally as you can. You have to be trustworthy. You have to be honest. You have to be ingenuous. You have to really have a desire to help people. You have to be caring. You have to be sincere. Those 6 things embody the ethics that we talk about with respect to a personal financial planner. What are ultimately the elements of a plan then, right? We're going to talk about this in the next chapter, but essentially a plan has to have some results, right? You have to talk about goals and objectives from an interview that you had. You need to understand what it is that the client wants. And quite frankly, sometimes when the client comes to you and asks you for help, they think they know what they want, but they really don't know what they want. They need something else. So that's, again, part and parcel of the communication issue. You have to understand what it is they want from their description. You have to kind of decide in the end, well, is that really what they need? Then, of course, you have to help them want to plan for the future. You have to be able to give some recommendations, and you have to have an action plan. This action plan it's a timeline, right? How are we going to do things? When are we going to do things? How do we get things in place? We have to do this on a very timely basis. So that has to be obviously part of the plan. And again, in view of a comprehensive plan, right, all of the plan components have to be there. They have to fit together. And quite frankly, in the end, just to keep beating the word communication, they have to be presented in a way that the client understands and appreciates the importance of what you're talking about.